Hello everyone and welcome to my studio. My name is Kristen Olson Stone. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this beautiful scene of Hawaii. This photo is from Oahu and it shows Waimanalo Bay. I'm going to start using a number 2 Silverbrush Bristlon brush just to do the drawing, and I'm using Indian red and ultramarine blue. These are Rembrandt oil paints, and they are the Cobra paints, which are the water soluble or water mixable oil paints. So I'm just drawing in the mountain. The sky is really beautiful, so I want to be sure that I leave a good amount of space for the sky. Really gorgeous island clouds. So I'm just going to kind of put in a few shapes of those like that. And then we've got the coastline and trees. So this is going to be fairly dark in value as compared to the mountain. The mountain is very grayed down, kind of a nice violet blue color. And making sure that the trees at the base of the mountain look dark in value will help the mountain look like it's further away and give it that atmosphere of a lot of moisture in the air. So the palm trees I'm not going to draw in now, but I will be painting those, and they will be the last thing that I paint. So this is just sort of an outline of the ocean. So you want to make sure when you do a painting of a seascape where you're looking up the beach that you don't bring the ocean wave right into the corner. You want to kind of make it swoosh around and give the viewer, I like to give the viewer the feeling that they're sort of standing here in the water and the water's washing up over their feet, and then they're looking up at the coast this way instead of having everything angle down evenly. Gives it a little more movement, creates more interesting shapes, and I like to give that sense of standing at the water's edge and maybe getting your feet wet. So this is just a little wave coming in, and then we've got the horizon just a little slightly bit behind the line of the trees. And you can see another offshore island in the distance. So we'll just lightly pencil that in. And that is our drawing. Whoops, almost our drawing. I'm gonna put in just a few notations to indicate the foliage on this side, the right side here. So I'm gonna put my brush down. That's all I need for my brush at this point. And now I'm gonna move to palette knife. I'm going to be using 2 different knives. And these are from Dick Blick. This one's a pretty small knife. I really like the knives with the rounded tips. And this one is a little wider tip than this one. This one is a great knife for doing some bigger strokes and still has a nice rounded tip, but it's small enough that you can do some detail. By the way, the idea behind this video is to make it so you're looking over my shoulder. This is an old pochade box that I've had for a long time from a company called Open Box M. I don't even think they're in business anymore, but it's a great pochade box. And this is the 8" by 10" version. And I thought this time, instead of filming flat, I'll film looking this way so you can see my palette, the colors I mix, and the painting in progress. And I just thought that would be kind of something different and would give you the sense of looking over my shoulder, and maybe you'll get more out of it. I don't know. If you haven't done so, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this format, if you prefer the flat format or if you like this version better. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any ideas about things that you would like to learn how to paint, send me a message or leave it in the comments. Thanks so much. So I'm just putting in the blue of the ocean, just blocking that in. So when you paint water, people have a tendency to want to make all their strokes in a horizontal direction, but you can make them with vertical strokes also, and it looks a little more contemporary. You can always sweep back over it later if you want to add some horizontal movement. So the color that I used for the water for the ocean is Rembrandt turquoise, and it is the perfect color for Hawaiian water. I am going to mix some ultramarine blue, this is ultramarine blue deep, into the middle section of the water, just to show a little depth. Now I'm going to take a gorgeous color called King's Blue, and I'm going to work on the sky. King's Blue is a fabulous color. It's a nice light blue. I'm mixing it with some titanium white for the sky and a little more ultramarine blue. I want to get just the right color for the sky. So when you're painting a painting, especially a landscape scene, and you have two blues in the painting, such as the ocean and the sky, it's really important to make sure that each of those blues is going in the opposite direction on the color wheel. So the sky is more of a violet blue, and the ocean is more of a turquoise blue. So that's more of a greenish blue. So on the color wheel, if you were right at primary blue, you would go in two different directions to come to each of these colors. So I made just barely enough of this paint for the section of sky. I really like it too when I have a blue sky at the top, that the sky doesn't go all the way across. I like it when the shape of blue just goes 3/4 of the way or something like that. So now I'm going to mix up some of the cloud color. I'm going to use King's Blue and quinacridone rose, and a little bit of cadmium orange. And the color I'm mixing up right now is going to be the color for the gray part of the clouds. So the clouds have a deep warm gray, and around them is a bright warm white. So I'm just mixing up the darker of those two colors first. So they're sort of backlit. Now, I mentioned earlier that the color of the mountain right here is also a violet gray. So I want to make sure that the color of the darker gray in the clouds is a few value shades lighter. I would say at least 3 value shades lighter than the color of and the value of the mountain. And in the reference photo, you can barely see that offshore island. So I'm going to make that more blue so it blends in with the clouds, but it still shows up as something separate. So it's going to be more blue. And again, this is a violet blue next to a greenish blue, which is the color of the ocean. So when you paint with palette knives, you want to try to block in all your big shapes first before adding the details. So now that I've got those shapes blocked in, and before I add the white of the clouds, I'm going to mix up the color for the mountain. So I'm going to take this color I already have mixed up, and I'm going to add some more ultramarine blue to it. And I'm also going to add some permanent red. This is permanent red deep. And it's still not dark enough, so I'm going to add some more ultramarine blue, a little more permanent red deep. I've taken this pochade box with me many places to do plein air painting, and I love it because it fits in a tote bag, and inside of it I can put all of my paints, my palette knife and brushes. I use short handle Bristlon brushes for traveling, they're great, and can go anywhere, and I can just put it on my lap or find a table, but I don't need a tripod easel or anything like that. I can just use this small pochade box. The downside is I can only do paintings that are no more than 10 inches wide, so it could be a tall skinny one like 10 by 16, but I can't be more than 10 inches wide. But when you're traveling, 8 by 10, 10 by 10, 10 by 14, those are all really nice sizes to paint when you're traveling anyway. So there is my block tint color for the mountain. Now the mountain also has green at the top, but I'm going to put that on much later. The reason is I wouldn't want the green to get accidentally dragged into any of the white of the clouds. So when I paint, I try to paint efficiently and make it easy for myself, because painting is hard. So the more you can practice and sort of streamline your process, the easier it will be and the faster it will be for you to paint. So now I'm going to mix up the color for the clouds, where it's a very light, warm white color. So I'm mixing titanium white, which is a cool white, with a tiny bit of cadmium orange, and it's a little bit strong. I got a little too much of it, so I'm adding more white to this mixture. And now I'm going to put that down for the clouds. So having white around the edges of the clouds gives the effect of them being backlit. And that's just a really pretty lighting situation for landscape paintings. And it's especially pretty for seascapes. Kind of gives the sky a dreamy look and kind of a sentimental feeling. It's always nice to impart your feelings, good feelings, into your landscape painting. Some artists talk about giving the sense of being there. You can do that, or it can be a sense of wishing you were there. It could be a sense of weather. You could be thinking about how the wind feels, maybe the sound of birds. You can sort of use all of your senses to put together a set of feelings that coordinate with your landscape. And if you do that while you're painting, those feelings really come through. I think that's why it helps to be in a positive headspace when you're painting. I think paintings that are done sort of as art therapy never quite have that same joy in them. At least that's been my experience. Okay, so I'm going to put some of this light color down along the bottom and just drag it into this mountain. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to block in the sand and the white water, and then we'll get to the greens. So I need to have that white right there. And I want to clean up the edge of my offshore island. Okay. So when I do the greenery of the palm trees and the trees along the shoreline, I'm going to do all the greens at one time, and I'm going to be doing them last. And I am going to put some of the beautiful light reflections on this mountain. In fact, I'm going to use some of this orange and white mixture, and I'm going to use my palette knife to just blend a little bit of it along the bottom of this mountain and sea cliffs, since I have it right here on my palette. It actually is the perfect color that I just happen to be using for the clouds. I'll put a little bit more. So I'm just putting the color on, and then I'm using my knife with pretty gentle pressure to just blend right on the canvas to blend that color into the sea cliff. And that'll give that little bit of atmosphere. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mix a little bit of quinacridone rose with the same white mixture and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to pull some of that up into the side of the mountain. I accidentally got some turquoise into that mixture, which I did not mean to do. Okay, that goes off to the side. So now I'm starting over. So King's Blue, ultramarine, and a little bit of quinacridone rose. And I'm going to pull that up just with the tip of my palette knife. So I'm stroking or pulling my palette knife down to make very gentle strokes. And that'll give that island mountain some nice dimension. So that is too light, so I'm just going to soften it a little bit. And that'll really come to life when I'm able to put the greenery down. So I'm wiping off my palette, and now I'm going to mix up a nice color for the sand. So in this reference photo, the sand is very yellow, very golden. So I'm not going to make mine quite that gold, but I am using cadmium yellow medium and cadmium orange to mix up this color. So if you want a color to be more gold and you don't have raw sienna or yellow ochre, and you want it to be more of an earthy gold, I guess that's a better descriptive word, how do you do that? So you want to add a little bit of blue and a little bit of pink, and that will gray it down just enough to make it more of an earthy color. And then you'll have something closer to raw sienna or yellow ochre or gold ochre or something like that. So you want to just keep mixing till you get the color right. And I don't think anybody ever looks at a seascape and says to themselves, I was there and I don't remember the sand being that exact color of yellow or gold or whatever. People do remember when it's a special beach like those pink sand beaches that they have in the Caribbean, or black sand beaches, but you just want a nice warm sandy color that coordinates nicely with your painting. I could see that even though I have a couple of different lights on this painting, that there's quite a bit of glare, so I'm just going to move it around a little bit so you can kind of see where we're at from different angles. So I'm not used to filming this way, so it's a little bit tricky to get the lighting set up at these different angles. And I just took a look at the video and I could see that there was some glare, so apologies for that. It's shiny, shiny paint too. So I'm gonna put a little bit of this color very lightly in this section because some of the sand is gonna be showing through where the water, the waves are washing up. So I'm gonna wipe that off. And now we can move on to the greenery and the ocean. So next will be this part of the ocean, which is where the water has washed up. So if you look at the places in the water here where you can see through the wet sand, you'll see that it's kind of a brownish color. It's darker than the gold sand. So wet sand is always darker than the dry sand. So we're going to treat this as dry sand and this is wet sand. So I've mixed Indian red, cadmium yellow together, and I've made this kind of darker, rich, golden brown color. And I'm just going to put that throughout this part of the water and in here. So I want to mix it with this other sand color to just make it dark, but not quite as dark as the other section. And then right along the edge of the dry sand, I want to have a band of this darker color. It's just kind of a nice wet sand edge. And I don't want to leave this point here, so I'm just going to smooth that out. Just from a design standpoint, I don't like to have that triangle there. But we're going to go over all of that with palette knife strokes of nice, cool violet blues. So I mixed up a couple of colors here. This one is a mixture of King's Blue, quinacridone rose, and titanium white. I'm going to use that for the sea foam. And then this mixture is turquoise and a little bit of cadmium yellow medium and titanium white. And then this one has more of the yellow in it and also a little bit of cadmium orange. So I'm going to start with this lighter turquoise hue. Just put a few strokes of that, going from left to right. And I'm going to add some more white to it. So we've got lots of layers of paint going on with the ocean. And I'm going to take some of this deeper green and put a few strokes of that and blend it into the water here in the foreground. So when you look at water, there are two planes. There's the plane where you can see into the water, and often this is where, if the water's moving back and forth, it's where it's slightly elevated, and that is always a warmer blue. And then there's the other plane of the water where it's reflecting the sky, and that's always a cooler blue. So I put the warm color down first. Now I'm going to work on the sea foam. And then I'm going to go back and put some of the lighter blue where it's reflecting the sky. So now I'm weaving it. You can see I'm putting my palette knife down, putting the paint on, and then I'm wiggling it back and forth. I want to drag some of the sand into the gray violet, but only some. So I want to I don't want them to be too blended. I want a nice amount of color separation, But to show movement, I need to have a little bit of blending. So just take some finesse and some getting used to what looks right, what looks like movement and the right amount of blending, and then what looks like overblending. If you overblend these two colors, it's just going to look mushy and blurry, and you won't have a nice painting. So now I'm pulling this color over to the right. And I'm going to put some more of it here, kind of just working away, working around this darker brown color. You see how my palette knife is almost always parallel to the canvas? If I were using brushes, it would be similar. I very often use the flat side of my brush, not the point. I'm going to turn this just a little bit in case there's glare, just kind of to let you see it a little more clearly. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up some more white. And this is white, and I'm going to mix it with the very little bit of violet gray that was here before, so it's not just straight out of the tube white. And I'm going to put those little waves in. So for the waves, I'm pulling my palette knife from left to right and sweeping it up a little bit. And then I'm putting the paint down and pulling. Like that. I'm going to pull some of this lighter white across the violet gray to create more movement and to capture some of that light colored sea foam where it's really bright white. So when you're working on a painting and you want it to have a sense of movement, and you're sitting down like I am right now, it's a good idea to hop up and take a look at your painting from far away. That's when you can really see if the movement is working, if your technique is creating the look of movement that you want it to. So I think I've got a good amount of movement going on there. This is a little messy right in there. Just want to smooth these. I want to smooth out these little pockets where you can see the sea foam, or see the, excuse me, the wet sand through the sea foam. Sometimes when I'm doing a demonstration, my brain gets stuttery, I think. Trying to come up with the right words, I sort of stumble over them sometimes, so apologies. Okay, so there's that. And I'm just dragging some of the sand into the water. So I want to add some more of this pretty green into the water around where the wave is. Just to put some little holes in the wave where you can kind of see that turquoise color. Hawaiians would call that pukas. Puka means a little hole. So you want to put the little puka of the ocean shining through the white part of the wave. And now I'm going to put, remember I talked about how the sky is reflecting in the ocean, so I'm going to put some of that light, pretty light blue where the ocean is reflective, where you don't see through into the turquoise water, but you just see the reflective colors. And I don't want to put too much of it because I already have a lot of that color tone throughout the painting. are. And now it's time to move on to the greenery. So I'm going to start with a darker mixture first. And I'm going to mix ultramarine blue, Indian red, and some of this green. And it sounds weird to have a red base, but you'll see it makes the green look more natural. And this is a very earthy red. So I'm just going to put this down first. And I'm going to use a combination of brushes and palette knife for the foliage. So the stems, or they're not stems, the trunks of the coconut palms are so skinny, it would be really hard to make them with a palette knife. I've done it and it never really looks that good. It doesn't look as good, certainly, as it does when I make those trunks with a brush. So I'm just gonna get my ocean horizon back because I did lose it here a little bit. This is a pretty small painting. I didn't check, but I think this canvas is 8 by 8. So when you work on something really small, dexterity is important. Okay, so I'm gonna just mix up a little more turquoise, light turquoise to put at the horizon of this beach here. Just want to make that edge really nice. There we are. So now I want to add some of the soft greens at the top of this mountain. So I'm going to use my brush again. And each time I drag my brush over the blue, it picks up some of that blue. So I'm just going to do this very carefully. And I'm adding a little bit of red to that green because it's not looking very natural. Okay, there we go. That's better. So remember, some of the green falls onto the edges of the cliffs. So these cliffs or mountains have a lot of vertical lines and ridges, and they're very defined and beautiful. So you just want to try to drag your brush across some of them and make sure that they don't look too evenly lined up. There's got to be kind of a randomness to the angles and patterns that you put into it. And the edge of the mountain is very dark. It's darker than what I have, so I'm going to just make this edge darker right where it's here against the clouds. So I put the light in before, now I'm going to put in some of the dark accents and clean up this edge. It has to be pretty dark to stand out against that sky with the backlit clouds. And at the top here, there's a nice mountain peak. So I'm going to put some dark there to give that definition. And I'm going to mix up a little more. I'm going to put some of that dark in some of these ridges. in between where I have streaks of light and green. I want to have some darks. And I'm going to put some on this side as well. Now, I'm really happy with how the painting looks, but my sand is a little flat, so I'm going to put my brush down and pick up my palette knife, and I'm going to add a little bit of texture to my sand and just break up the colors a little bit. So I'm going to mix up some cadmium yellow and titanium white and a little bit of cadmium orange. And I just want to put some strokes of paint to break it up and make it look a little more interesting. And I'm going to pick up some Indian red. And drag that through the sand as well. And back here against the foliage, just want to soften that edge. Oh, I like how that looks much better. And lastly, I want to put some brighter yellow greens here. I feel like they're too gray down, and I want them to really pop out against the turquoise water. So now I'm going to put in some of this lighter green turquoise color in the water here. And what that does is it gives the water a little more life, but it also ties in the greenery colors with the ocean. So it's balanced on the right and the left. Now I want to do the coconut palms. So I'm going to use Indian red and ultramarine blue. And the coconut palms, when you're ready to do this stage, by the way, you want to make sure your clouds are exactly how you want them to be. And I just noticed I want to just soften the edge of this cloud up here, because once you put the green down, it's really hard to go back and fix anything in the background unless you want to wait till it's dry. And it just won't ever have as fresh and good a look as it would if you can just do it at this stage. So I'm just putting in a few more strokes to really make my clouds look beautiful. And my white got a little bit dirty, so I just mixed up some and it had too much pink in it. Not what I wanted. So I'm putting a little more white down here. And I think I'm also going to put some more of this sky blue. I'm gonna pull some of that down in between the clouds. I think my clouds look beautiful, but they're a little too linear. So I want to break up the white by adding some blue down in the clouds to show the sky coming through, or the sky behind the clouds, I guess. That's a better way to describe it. Okay, so now I'm going to do the coconut palms. So I'm going to put the top of it here and just drag it very carefully through. And I'm going to do another pass. And now I'm going to use some orange and red and give it a little color so that it pops out from the mountain, which is so blue, and the sky. So when you paint coconut palms, you want them to stand out from what's behind them. So if it's just a dark brown color, it won't be noticeable. So that's why I do the dark first, and then I go over it with this nice orange. So when I went to art school and took plein air painting workshops, the focus was always on making all the colors exactly as you see them. But I've really gotten away from that. I find that I appreciate that skill, but I have more fun just sort of manipulating colors the way I want things to look. And if you have enough painting skills, manipulating colors is fun, and it's not that hard once you know some of the rules, like knowing your complementary colors, for instance. So I've got 4 palms. I'm going to make one more. I think I'll make one more here. And I'll give this one some orange also. So we've got our palm trunk. So now I'm going to put the palm fronds on. And again, I'm going to do that sort of dark to light format. So I'm going to use a dark green. And I'm just going to make some nice palm fronds. I know that the wind is blowing from the left. I can see it in the picture. And I've been to this spot and I know how the wind blows from left to right. It's a trade winds because this is the trade wind side of the island. Now where the greenery is in front of the mountain, I'm going to add some yellow and some white so that it really stands out. And now back to the darker green. So wherever the palm fronds are in silhouette in front of the clouds, they should be a darker, less colorful green. Whenever you see something in silhouette, especially if it's in front of something very light, it's usually colorless or close to colorless. When it's in front of another object, that's when you can really see the colors. So just going to go through and make the rest of these palm fronds. The last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab some white and I'm just going to drag it with my triangle brush to give some sort of thick textured, jaggedy edged white. I want to just bump up my seafoam a little bit. I like all the marbling and texture and the different colors I have in the foreground, but it just needs to be defined by some white. People usually think of definition as something dark for definition, but white can also be used for definition. I'm also going to add a little bit of shadowing at the base of the rocks here. just with my triangle brush, I'm just going to put a little bit of violet shadowing in there. There's a little bit of it in the picture, but not too much. You can see the palm tree kind of casting a little shadow. But a nice violet color near this green is very pretty.